So it's 2003, and a friend of mine loans me a copy of this album called The Ugly Organ by a band called Cursive. And I heard this thing, and it was crazy and frenetic and haunting and rocking. There was cello in it, and I was like, this thing is cool. And here we are, 21 years later, and Cursive have continued to release multiple albums. They have a new one coming out in a couple weeks, and I get the opportunity to interview Tim Kasher, who is the frontman, lead singer, songwriter, guitarist of the band Cursive, also bands The Good Life. He's done solo albums, and I was so excited when he agreed to come on the show today to talk about his inspirations and what really drives him as an artist, as a musician, and really excited about having him on. So let's not waste any more time. Let's talk to Tim Kasher from Cursive and a few other projects. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
Just took a sip from my Waterproof Records coffee mug to get hydrated and get ready to have this interview. But before we get into that interview, we're going to talk about DistroKid. As you know, they support this show, and I have a special link that you should click on to get 30% off your first year. It's as simple as that. It's distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. You click on that, and when you sign up your first year of DistroKid service, you get 30% off because you clicked on my link. DistroKid can put your music out to the world immediately on all the streaming platforms. It's super easy. It's amazing to use. I use it, and you should use it too. So make sure you use my link. Save that money, because I know you're a struggling artist and you want the world to hear your music. So why not shave 30% off getting your music out there? So use it, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Now, we've said those things. We can get into the interview. Again, I said up top who Tim Kasher is, a huge part of the Omaha, Nebraska music scene, really created that sound and all those bands coming up from that time, and part of the Saddle Creek Records crew. So I was so excited to meet him via social media, but this is my first time to actually get a chance to get some face-to-face time with him, and I'm excited about it. So let's not waste any more time, and let's get to it. Welcome, Tim Kasher, to Waterproof Records. Glad to have you here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, have you had to do a lot of podcasts recently, especially since you've got some music dropping right now, getting asked left and right to be on a podcast like every other day?
Podcasts are kind of the thing. They're definitely like I would say the du jour, but I mean, it's really, podcasts have been kind of hitting hard for a few years now. But yeah, it is kind of funny for each, album cycle. I feel like podcasts have taken more and more of a center stage,
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that when I started it, I didn't know it was going to be anything more than kind of a hobby, a fun opportunity to talk about albums and stuff. But as it grew and getting the chance to connect with, music heroes and people that I really admire has been a really cool side benefit. I think that's why anybody starts a podcast, is it brings you closer to the things that you love. If you did a podcast about Mad Men, eventually you'd be like, I finally got John Hamm on the show, or what, whatever it is. But anyway, yeah, you and I have never had a chance to meet in real life, but you just told me before we started recording, we crossed paths in a lower level after show at Sunny Day Real Estate, which was, I think, 2 years ago now.
That seems right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great show.
They're always great. I love watching. I love seeing them perform. I like seeing Jeremy Anika perform solo too. It's so nice.
Oh yeah.
He's like really keeps people like wrapped.
He does.
I'm going to interview you. Who would be as you're doing Waterproof Records? What is the name that pops in your head for the artist that would be your John Hamm that you're like just waiting to one day hopefully interview?
That's a great question, and everybody's going to know what my answer is, but the nerves that I have about that encounter are so high. It would be Billy Corgan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would be Billy Corgan. But here's the thing, like, did you ever watch the television show Community? Did you ever get into Community at all with,
no, with
Joel
never
McHale? So Donald Glover, is really great on the show, and you find out early on that he's a fan of LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow, like it's the most important person in his life, and they, out of a gesture, like convince LeVar Burton to come by and say hi to his character, and he ends up having like a panic attack, and he doesn't enjoy any moment of it at all. It's so built up in his mind that he's like screaming and he's like hiding in closets, and they're like, "Wait, I thought this guy was your hero," but he's like, "You don't understand." And I feel like, so I've met Mr. Corgan, but I worry because it's been a 30-year journey of following the Smashing Pumpkins, and I worry about just it going awry. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I ask a question that's maybe I wasn't thinking it through, you know, and it comes across the wrong way, and then he's like, "I never want to see that guy's face ever again."
Right.
So I feel like I can never really interview Billy Corgan, I don't think. So yeah.
But yeah, I recall just now that because you just recently listened to the new album and quite liked it, right?
I did, and it's heavy. It's guitar heavy, and I think that that's what most of us have been waiting for a long time, which is he's a great guitarist. He's a killer. He can shred. The dude can shred, you know. And Jimmy Chamberlain's drumming is one of my favorite drummers in the world. Yeah. And so when you utilize those two well, I think it's really exciting. And so that's what I was really so impressed by this new album, is it had been many, many years since we'd gotten a guitar-driven rock album.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I really hear you on Chamberlain, man. That guy's just really tops. I saw when they kind of one of those shows where they reunited maybe 5 years ago now, but you're probably there. It was Pumpkins at the Forum.
Yeah, I was there.
I feel like it's before pre-pandemic.
It was 2018. Yeah. That was the big reunion one where James Iha had come back, and it was kind of this big to do, and they were doing, you know, you walked around the Forum and they had lyrics on the walls, and you know, it was very nostalgic and memorabilia, and that was before any of this happened for me on social media and got me into a place where I could even interact with them. So I was attending there. And it was a cool big moment to see that band, but shows at stadiums that size are great and all, but you feel so far removed from the experience. You know, it's I was just at YouTube Theater a couple nights ago, and it's right next to SoFi here in LA, you know, and SoFi is absurd. It's so big that no matter where your seats are, you're like, who's on stage? It's just like massive. And then YouTube Theater have you been to the YouTube Theater? It's actually kind of nice. It's like a nice smaller.
No, I guess I haven't. Where is that?
It's connected right next to it, and it's very modern. But I would put it on scale with like the Wiltern, but a modern building, you know, something like that. But
so you would have loved this. You just had me thinking about one of the better performances, shows that we've seen. My spouse Gwyneth and I just the other week. We were in. I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska.
Yes,
and we were back there for actually for some different stuff. But Primus and Coheed and Cambria, that tour that's been going around.
Yes.
They were playing at a new venue called Astro, which was actually outdoor. And because it's like the benefits of being from Omaha, I'm friends with the people who opened the venue.
That's great.
So I asked if I could go, and not only did they let me go, but I was like, the guy, you know, like, I'm sorry, I should also say that because I'm also buds with Coheed and Cambria. So like, I basically had all these perks, and we were able to watch the show from this VIP up front. So we were so close to Les and so close to Lyr, and it was just like, it was crazy. It was a really great show.
Amazing. I know I've yet to see Primus live. other than I just recently saw them with Sasanta, which was the Maynard James Keenan
I was
birthday
at that
party.
Show. Yeah.
Oh, I was there too. So
Yeah.
yet another. We've probably been at so many of the same shows together.
Seriously, yeah.
So I loved seeing them play, and it blew me away. But in that show, it was like we got a song or two, and then they were off, and then they were on, and then they were off, and so it was a nice little. It was like a review night more than anything.
Totally, yeah.
Killer show. We get a Tool song at the end. We got some great songs, but it was a whole bunch of mixed bag of great bands on stage, and I'd really love to see Primus as the focus for the night and see what they do. So. But enough about every other band and what I'm going through. I invited Tim Kasher on my show to talk about this fucking guy. So you set up perfectly that you're from Omaha, Nebraska. That's your home turf, and that's where you were born and raised, and that's really where you rise up and start bands. And I wanted to ask you, because at that age, when you're young and you're a teenager, who would have been somebody that if you would one day be like, I want to interview that person? Do you have somebody from when you were a child that you were like, if I ever got a chance to be in the same room with them, I would be over the moon?
Well, yeah, there's one that just pops into my head that I murphed pretty hard. Was and this isn't really maybe the first person I think of, but this is definitely a mistake I'd made. Was I was at a Newport Festival, this is a while ago now. Probably in the aughts, and Elvis Costello was playing. I was like backstage, hanging with some friends that were playing, and Elvis Costello was playing, and like my own freaking friends were like, buddies were like over there, like just kind of chatting with them, talking with, like my like old friend like Jenny Lewis, like actually has done like work with him.
Yes, Jenny Lewis, so talented.
And I just couldn't bring myself to even with like that, like at an inn, like I could have been like, oh hey Jenny, here's your drink, or and then like, oh hi Mr. Costello.
Elvis, hi.
Yeah, and instead I was just like probably being more like Donald Glover, and I was just like, I can't possibly bother him. Anyway, that was too bad because I think Elvis Costello is pretty neat. But yeah, I think Elvis, Tom Waits pops into my head.
Oh yeah.
And as far as just being like when I was young and like stuff that I was like really like that was really formative,
Yeah, absolutely. You grew up in a house of 6 kids. Yes. Yeah. You're the youngest. You're the baby. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So did you get in your household? Did you have a musical household? Like were your parents playing a lot of records growing up, or was it on you kids to have that discovery?
So it's kind of yes and no.
Okay.
On the family side, and also, there's really no music. There's really no musical. No one's really playing music in my family. I did grow up with my grandma raised me as well, and she played organ, and that's about the closest connection. But it was like, she's from another generation where she's like, I play organ. She's like church organ, and
it was church. Yeah, I was gonna say, was it church organ?
Yeah, I wasn't like jazz or anything like that.
Yeah.
She didn't like have like her Hammond B3. And
I was gonna say she's got sunglasses and a cigarette hanging out. She's like, let me.
Yeah, she's like, stay in school, kid.
Yeah.
But so in my parents like really had like 4 records. It's like, and Simon & Garfunkel is one of them. Thankfully, I appreciate that.
Same in my household.
But the real benefit I had was, namely, probably my older brother, who, and my older sisters too had good taste. They're listening to Bruce Springsteen and Go-Go's, and they had some good contributions. But my older brother, tapped into like the other cool kids at school. So I had great music at a really early age. I was, I'd mentioned to you, I think yesterday, like Violent Femmes, like the self-titled album. I was listening to that basically like when it came out, and I was, I mean, I probably missed it by a couple years, but they come out maybe 82 or something.
I think it was 83.
Sure.
Yeah, 82, 83, somewhere around
I think I had a dubbed cassette of it in like 84, 85, and it just really changed my life in major ways. But he showed me a lot of stuff, and back then it was like also pretty alternative stuff. So it was like Hoodoo Gurus and Plimsolls, and like that stuff that was like that stuff that hasn't really kind of like made it to the standard, but also stuff like English Beat, Smith, Cure, Smith's Cure, like just like all that great stuff that I was really probably too young. It was great. I was like under 10, and I got to be exposed to a lot of cool music.
How what's the age difference between you and your older brother?
4 years, I think. So he was probably just only 14 or so, or 13, whatever he was. But you meet the cool kids, and
totally.
You know?
That was exactly what happened to me, and I've talked about it a ton on the show. I have an older brother, and our musical journey, I was so dependent on him to kind of bring me the cool stuff. And we were, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, so not unlike Omaha, Nebraska. Yeah. It's a part of the world that people pass through or hear about, but it's not, heavy populated with a ton of things going on, I guess. We kind of had to make our own way, and college radio was essential, discovering a college radio station and finding out all those bands. But I also, because of my older brother, was at that young age where the kids were listening to the popular radio hits and whatnot, and I was excited to be like, I'm listening to the cool underground, stuff like that. So you mentioned Violent Femmes. So do you think that that's one of the first things that when you were a kid and you heard it and you were like, what is this? And did that drive you to start writing music? That album?
I don't know if that album did. Another, as you cited that as an example, another band that comes to mind is, as far as like being like even younger and really finding something for myself on my own, was Men Without Hats, Safety Dance, which is really makes sense because you're really small, young children. You're gonna like that song. It's
totally,
really,
you can dance if you want to.
Yeah. But it was also very alternative.
It is,
and I remember going to. We had a Target down the street that we could walk to, and Target we could go. It was just bins and bins of records. And I know Target has records again now, but they have like the 7 records, and they're all Taylor Swift.
Exactly. I was going to say they're freshly wrapped bands that you go, is this valuable that it's on vinyl? I don't know.
yeah. But back Target would have just bins and bins, and I remember that was the first record I ever bought was Men Without Hats, and that's like still like a legit cool record.
It is.
That's all. It was like 80s alternative new wave. It makes me feel good to be like, okay, at a really young age, I wanted something. I always was looking for something like Left of the Dial.
Yeah. That explains a lot about your sound. Left of the Dial for sure. I think so. When did you start playing guitar?
I started at 13. Yeah, but definitely earlier than then. Like we had like a Casio keyboard, and like we start. Yeah, like Matt is like my main cohort in Cursive. We grew up together. Our very first band was called the Semi-Conscious, and it was just a Casio keyboard and playing a pillow was like a set of drums.
Yes.
But we still recorded stuff. We did covers. I think we did a Fine Young Cannibals cover.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. Oh my God! So you guys have been playing together for a long time, since like elementary, middle school age. It sounds like.
Really, for both of us, our entire musical upbringing has been together.
Yeah. Is everybody else in Cursive all Omaha as well, or did some of them, are they transplants?
They are basically all Omaha, though Patrick Newberry, who is our like very excellent keyboardist and trumpet player, he's actually from Kansas, and then we met him while he was living in Chicago, but then he moved to Omaha and now he lives in Dallas. But so he's like the other one who's like not quite Omaha native, but
gotcha.
He's definitely cut his teeth and spent a lot of time in Omaha. So
how would you describe Omaha in the 1980s, early 90s, right before you're starting all the bands? Like, do you think that really the music scene didn't start until, the alternative Left of the Dial, if you will, what will become Saddle Creek? What's the Omaha sound? Was it non-existent before 1991, 92 when you guys are kind of coming up? Was there not really anything there and you kind of had to make it happen?
No, quite the opposite. Thankfully, I think that's so important for like the development of all of us that kind of ended up becoming Saddle Creek. It's that. So, I'll try. I won't go long on this, but
no, you have to go long. That's what this is about.
Yeah, I guess it's a podcast. Initially, like while we were young in high school, and we did feel very much like in our own bubble. We were aware of like this or that other high school bands, but they weren't giving us a lot of inspiration or anything like that. There's just like also they were doing it, and so we were doing covers and playing homecomings and proms to make money to record some originals that we had as well. This band was called March Hares at the time.
March Hares.
But then what really woke us up is meeting a few people kind of like outside of our high school scene who introduced us to the world of underground punk rock that was like alive and well in Omaha, Nebraska, and Lincoln, Nebraska, and everywhere around the country. It's just that we didn't know, like we really felt sheltered in Omaha. We just didn't know that they were doing that. And I remember, some of the first shows that I went to and just being like, it really, really opened up my eyes in such a major way of seeing these people that were really only a few years older than me.
Yes.
But you know how big a deal that is to be
absolutely
15 and you're watching a 19-year-old,
Yeah.
It was a huge deal. Anyways, there's bands called like Mercy Rule, Sideshow, Mousetrap. These were just like and bands who I still totally vouch for. It's not like, oh, they were cool. They were cool when you're kids. It's like, no, these are bands that I really would encourage anybody to go check out. They're just really great, independent punk rock from the Midwest, from Nebraska, from the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah. My experience is so similar to yours. You and I are very close in age. We're only 4 years apart.
Nice.
And so, I had a very similar experience, especially being in Tulsa, that I felt very sheltered, and like my only gateway out was MTV and 120 Minutes and Headbangers Ball.
Yeah,
and also a really religious household. So I wasn't going to a lot of rock shows. But by the time I got into high school and I started going to downtown Tulsa and seeing some of these local bands at the time, like we had this band called the Melodramatic Wallflowers, and then we had a band called Jacob and Fred Jazz Odyssey, and they had guys on the stage playing like big old oil drums with like this, and it was the craziest thing. And these were all teenagers, just a few years older, so it was such a similar experience that I was like, I could do this. I could do what these guys are doing. Like it suddenly the curtain dropped, and I didn't feel like everything that I was seeing on MTV was so far away, because somehow all those people in the music videos felt so much older than me. And it wasn't until I saw those live bands that I was like, we're not that far apart in age, Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
It's a reminder of how important local scenes are, and just
absolutely. Yeah. And I would say that's, one thing that's interesting about living in Los Angeles. I've been here for 23 years. I would imagine it's harder for a teenager here to really, because it's so big and so sprawling, you probably have to laser focus like in one town. Like I'm in the Rancho Cucamonga scene, or I don't know what it is, but
absolutely, I think it's got to be exactly. I think and I don't know even how that works, but I think you're dead on. I think that probably right now there are myriad scenes, like let's use LA as the example. I feel bad that I'm really out of touch with them, and I mean, I guess I don't want to use my age as as like the excuse. I should be able to find. Why does age matter? I should be able to find house shows and like what underground shows are happening. And I've been here for a little while. Certainly not 23 years, but we've been here since 2015 now, and something I do blame is that I do, I am on tour a lot, and so I don't get a chance, maybe the opportunity to like kind of figure out what's going on locally as much. But I lament it, because I do think that being a part of I grew up, my identity is being part of a local scene, and is the local Omaha scene. That's like really it's the identity that I most closely associate with.
Absolutely.
And so I would like to have that here in LA too, and I probably just never will, because I'm not from LA actually.
And I hear you, because I think you have to stay here for an incredibly long time, and I think that you already have. I mean, Omaha is Tim Kasher. You know what I mean? Like I think people think of that city and that sound as you are a part of that so much. So you, if anything, you bring a little bit of Omaha here.
Yeah, and that is my scene, and that is, I can tell at this point that I'll be going to the grave always saying that I'm from Omaha. Wherever I'm from, I say I'm actually from Omaha.
Yeah.
But that's really the essence of where I'm from,
Yeah, it's remarkable. But you did just talk about not necessarily being plugged into the scene, but I'll say, before we did this podcast, as my audience knows, when I ask my guests for what's their waterproof record, as in that album that changed you or, changed your DNA, it's a thing you listen to. I often say it's something that happens when you're young, whether you're a teenager or you're a pre-teenager, but it's a thing that really kind of flips the light on. And you had mentioned, like we talked about, the Violent Femmes self-titled being a big one. But I know that recently you had talked about and gone into detail on that on another show. So we talked about a couple other albums. But you said something so cool, which is you said, well, there is an album currently that you're really excited about. And you were the first guest to suggest this idea of, this is an album that I'm enjoying now, and maybe this will open the door for people listening to the show and being like, this could one day be their waterproof record, if you will. And so go ahead and say what that album and band was.
Yeah, I suggested the Military Gun record that came out last year, which is called Life Under the Gun, I believe. And it was just a playful thing for me to bring up with you, because I've been thinking a lot lately about these are conversations that you've had. It's conversations that all of us have had as we get older. And you have, I don't know who they are, but I know you have your friends who are just like, music's not good anymore.
Always.
And it's just so tiresome for me. And some of my closest friends are arguing with me about this. And and I find it tiresome, because it's just like, it's also tired. My response is tiresome, which is, the music's not, it's just you. It's you. I'm sorry, it's you. It's not, music hasn't figured, it's not like they haven't figured out how to make good music still. Everyone's continuing to be incredibly innovative about music. And it's still very exciting. It's still vital. So it had me thinking about Military Gun, which I think that record in particular is just a record that I've stumbled upon over the last handful of years, where I've been like, wow, this is one of those front to back, like
it's
there's
great.
not
Start to finish.
Start to finish. There's no filler on this thing. Every song feels like it could be somebody's favorite song. Every song, it's exciting. It's a very exciting album, and so it had me thinking. But the thing is that as I'm like looking at 50 years old, as I'm turning 50 very soon.
You're an August birthday. You're an August birthday like me. We're both August birthdays. Yeah.
Yeah. The 19th for me. What's yours?
19th. Mine is August 7th. I just turned 46.
Nice. Happy birthday.
Thank you. And happy early birthday to you. You're about to be 50. But anyway,
so,
you were saying.
I've been thinking about that, just that it's hard in these accelerated or these older ages to experience the vitality of an album when you are 16. It's really hard, and I respect that. I'm trying to stay as youthful as possible. I don't really want to succumb to being like, oh, I'm old and I don't listen to music anymore or whatever. But it is different. It totally is different. And I have to acknowledge that, and I don't mind acknowledging it, that I'll never be able to hear the closest I've gotten, I think, sorry, I'm going on tangents, but the last Portishead, the third Portishead record that was around 2009 maybe or so. Mm-hmm. That was a huge deal for me as far as wow, I was really affected me. Also, also Sharon Van Etten over the last decade. Some of her work has really hit me in a profound way. Still probably not the way that Pixies Doolittle will hit me, or the way that Arches of Loaf would hit me, or Fugazi, because that was formative.
Yes.
So that was, but the thing is, as an adult, I'm still managing to find stuff. Anyway, so Military Gun, I can't hear it the way that, I'll never be able to hear it the way I would if I was 16, but it has me thinking damn, that there's a lot of 16-year-olds out there who are their life is changing, their life is evolving because Military Gun right now, and that's really cool. It's a really It's a really important record. I think maybe it's not incredibly important. It's important to me, and I know it's important to a lot of people. Yes. Probably an easier example to cite as far as a waterproof record of a very recent one is that Turnstile record.
Yes. I'm glad I was about to say Turnstile, because I just saw Military Gun a couple weeks ago. I had an amazing time. They're an LA band. They're from here, which is so cool. They're relatively new, and if I'm not mistaken, that album is their debut album, Life Under the Gun, or do they have one before that? I don't know.
I think so. I should know that too. They had releases before, but I think Life Under the Gun might be the debut
by album. Their first album. But Turnstile was another band that I saw I saw live footage of people at the shows, and I saw the stage dives and the energy, and I saw so many young faces in that crowd. And I just immediately was like, how exciting for those kids. What a thrill to be in that room and to be feeling that energy right now. And I know that me personally, I would be in the back because I'd be like, I don't want to dislocate my shoulder or break anything. Yeah. But I would be watching just with a smile on my face. And Turnstile was a band that had energy. And you can see that there's a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid out there right now cranking that album and just being like, this is the best thing I've ever heard, And you said exactly what I've said so many times before to my friends, which is we won't hear it the same way that we did when we were teenagers. We won't hear it the same. And also, a lot of our peers that are complaining, they're forgetting that finding good music and new music was a little bit of legwork that they were fine with as teenagers. It was work that they were okay with. But at 30, 40, 50, they're kind of like, life is busy. I've got too much shit to do. I don't have time to pilfer through and put in the extra effort. And I want to say to them, it requires you to pay attention. You can't just turn on the radio, turn on the TV, and they're going to feed you what's good. It's just like when we were teenagers. It's the same thing. MTV and the radio are giving you the hits. If you want to get the good shit, you've got to stay up late, go through the playlist, and find what band is being recommended by the people that you love. What is Tim Kasher listening to that he thinks is great, and it'll probably be something you like if you love Cursive and The Good Life, and you know what I mean. It's like you have to do the legwork. So
it's a matter of that passion, the passion that we all clearly had in our teens and 20s, and it's just a matter of trying to maintain it. Yes. And it's not easy. It's certainly not easy.
It's not easy. It's not easy. You mentioned a lot about us getting older. And I think that that is definitely a theme. I listened to your solo album you released in 2022, Middling Age. That is a wonderful album. You really impressed me because, for the audience that knows Tim, he's got multiple bands, solo projects, The Good Life, Cursive, collaborations, and you've just been very prolific in your life. You've put out a lot of different music, and I think what's so cool about these solo albums, and especially this one, is it's a very stripped down version of you. And from what I understood, a lot of this was COVID lockdown, like ideas and things coming from a much more quieter headspace, like we all went through, right? Yeah. But you constantly surprise me with your choices of instruments to include. It always amazes me. It's like, I don't know if that's something that happened to you when you were young, but you're listening to anything you write and you're like, there's it goes all the way back to the ugly organ with the cello and then the horns in Happy Hollow. And then you'll listen to a song and you'll be like, is that a theremin? Is that a you include so many different instrumentations. And is that something that has been with you since you were young, or is it just like you just loved adding these unique instruments in all the songs you write?
I think more of the latter. I think I just get interested in timbres and in its education. It's like a lifelong education of trying to understand arranging and then trying to understand what instruments offer, the different feel, and and also it's so much of just this aesthetic too, and also I suppose not selling a song short, just kind of looking at it, because what's nice about music, especially in the 2020s, especially in this technological age, it's pretty attainable, it's not, so if you want oboe on something, it's actually more attainable than you might think. You don't have to go broke to
getting an oboe. Yeah, it's possible. My introduction to you and your music goes back to 2003 with the Ugly Organ. I'm sure for a lot of people in our generation that weren't so close to Omaha, around the country, it was when somebody handed us a copy or a CD of the Ugly Organ, and you popped it on and you were just like, this is very unique for what we've been listening to at the time. You know, it's the early 2000s and the garage rock revival has been dominating the airwaves with, you know, White Stripes and the Strokes. And then right around 2002, I think I'm listening to like the Doves and I'm trying to think of like what, you know, Taking Back Sunday, and you know, I'm screaming my heart out in my car of my feels. I think maybe this is transatlanticism, Death Cab era, or close to it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I hear this album, and it's this inclusion of your songwriting style, your vocals, and then this addition of the cello, which is just something I had never heard before. And it was haunting. It was carnival-esque. It was thematic. It felt like a story. It is a story. It's thematic in its way. And was that the album that really kind of changed things for you in terms of just your ability to continue on making music?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I could probably give a couple responses to that. I mean, one is kind of like the maybe like more obvious, like fiscal one, which is just like that album was successful,
right.
So it definitely like affords you a many years to kind of like continue to where you kind of are fortunate enough to still kind of have people's attention, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm really thankful to have made something, to created something like that that resonated with people well enough to kind of like to be able to stay, you know, some level of vitality in the industry as a result.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But more importantly, actually importantly, maybe I should say, is it was really scary to release that album because it was I'll just maybe mostly speak for myself. We'd found some success with Cursive's Domestica, and I for whatever reason that formative time of my life, with Ugly Organ, I decided to take more of a stab at just kind of doing what I truly thought music should sound like.
Yeah.
And that was really scary because I really went out on a limb, and not only me, but I think a handful of us really thought like, wow, this is really going to stink. Like no one's like this is going to be a real stinker, but you know, we like it. So
that's phenomenal to me that you thought that, you know,
I was pretty upset. I was pretty upset on releasing that album. But anyway, it was the long and short of it is it was a really good lesson for me to be and that's now what the most often like the advice I give as far as like advice to like new generations is just try to do what your song, try to stick as closely to your voice or who you are as you can. And then just cross your fingers. I'm not saying it works, but just cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah, and you probably walk away from it though going, well, I was authentic to what I think would sound good, and
which I think is way more important. I think it's more important to be authentic and true to yourself, and to like actually contribute your own voice. And then if that means that you also are going to, have a day job, and music isn't going to work for you, I think that's probably okay. I think that's better, you know, unless what you need so badly. And you know what? We're all different types of people. There are some people who are just like, oh, look, I just need to be up on that stage any way I can. And if that's your passion, then maybe you just need to figure out how to get up there, you know?
Yeah.
For me, that's not my passion I think my passion is to write the best stuff I possibly can. That's my passion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's more important to me. So I'd be happier. And even though I'm very appreciative of the life I've been given, I still know that I'm the type of person that I would be more content with a day job I don't love that much, but knowing that I didn't compromise the music I'm doing.
Yeah. I think that's very well said, and that's so interesting to learn about what you experienced while putting out that album, and insightful for everybody to know that it is a bit scary. I'm going to botch this quote because it was just one of those things when you're scrolling through the endless stream of whether it was TikTok Reels or TikToks or Instagram Reels. It was an interview with David Bowie, and Bowie was looking at the camera and he was telling you as a musician, as an artist, he's like, get to where you are with what you're writing, and then you have to push into this place where you're uncomfortable. And he said that's how you know you're doing something great, if you're not comfortable, if it's scary.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty spot on to what you just talked about, which is you thought people were going to hate it. It was very uncomfortable to get there. And then the reward of that is it was truly authentic. It was truly you, you know?
Yeah, I can volley with, I also am not positive if this quote is where this came from for sure, but I think it's Perry Farrell.
Oh, yeah, great.
And it was from forever ago, but I always remembered something that stayed with me that I think was Perry Farrell was him saying you need to ultimately it was like you need to write as if you can't have your parents in mind, you can't have your family in mind. I think he's really kind of focusing on that, like you need to write from like from a place where you're not scared, you're not worried about what society is going to think or what your parents are going to think or how they're going to react to this. Like it's all of that will inhibit what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's tough. But I believe in it too. I think he's right. It's like you have to. And I don't think I can do it ultimately, but I do as best a job as I can. I think ultimately, I think I'm like maybe just still a little too concerned about hurting people's feelings and stuff like that.
Always,
Always.
Guilty as charged. That is one of my biggest life struggles. Is I don't like to upset people or have people mad at me at all.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah. So I'll take this moment too for anyone, because I think that over the years people do have gotten the false impression that I am kind of like maybe can be kind of cruel or because my lyrics tend to be sardonic and critical, but it's always to me. That's just like that's always been the thing. It's just like I'm just being hard on myself. Yeah, I'm not, because especially songs like "Art Is Hard," which is like off of Ugly Organ. It's kind of a big song of ours, and a lot of people have kind of I've found people misinterpreting that as my kind of like accusation, like finger wagging toward like the industry or toward other writers. And it's just like, oh God. No, as far as I'm concerned, other writers, they have their own problems,
Right. It's you looking in. It's introspective. This whole journey about being your authentic self, it comes up often on this show. And here, a moment of vulnerability for me to you is that, I moved to LA trying to be an actor, trying to be a writer, trying to work in this industry. And I just spent so many years, I was a music fan and in bands in high school, but along the way, when I was in high school, I got into theater and got into acting and went to acting school and blah, 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 tried to do that. And I moved to LA chasing that drug, that fix, that entertainment fix.
Yeah. And
I think I spent 20 years and this is kind of a hard thing and looking inward, doing it wrong. Doing it wrong. And what I mean is I think I wanted something so bad that everything I put out in the world struggled with a sense of not being true to myself and really wanting something so bad. And the things that have happened to me since the lockdown and these videos is I no longer was trying for that anymore. And I was able to, for once, be my authentic self. And yes, my authentic self is somebody who makes claymation versions of himself to Primus videos or has a leaf blower in his face for a Smashing Pumpkins video or whatever it is. But that is the goober, silly person who loves music and loves entertaining. And you mentioned before about the need of being in front of people and being on stage and how you get there. And I think it just took me a very long time, especially in a city like Los Angeles, to figure out how to be honest and true and not chase the thing that ends and ruins so many people in the creative industry, right? Is this kind of elevation of the self. So
that all sounds really dead on to me. I think that sounds accurate, and I'm glad to hear that
I'm out of it.
That you worked through that. You're able to work through that.
At 46 years old, I'm doing great. It's this is the hardest thing, and this is what you talk about. This aging that comes up on your solo album recently. This idea, it's like we just can't seem to escape the fact that our bodies are getting older. We're getting older. My mind still feels sharp and ready to do all that I can. But it's this like, I'm looking at my life and going, I'm this age now and I'm just now discovering these truths. And is it too late? But you know what I mean? It's just these up and down emotions of like this clarity and purpose that you're given so late in life, and what I would have given to have known these things at 22, you know, to have that pure of thought. But that's life.
Yeah, that's just the way it worked out. So.
Yeah. Well, you were sorry. That was me taking over the podcast, and you know, having to pull out a box of tissues and start crying about myself. It becomes like a talk show. You were also, I was an English major in college. You were as well in philosophy as well. And then you flirted with the idea of being an English professor. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you think that that's why you like having so many themes and stories in your music? Do you think that that comes from that study of English literature, that you kind of put a narrative in your music?
Yes. Although I maybe I would suggest that it's my interest in narrative and storytelling that drew me to literature as well. You know, that drew me to English as a major. You know, like I think there was something even before that, but that also continued to feed it. You know, and I learned a lot. I really loved college, especially once you get past, you know, all the bullshit you have to get through.
The gen eds, those first classes that they make you take, and then you get to take the stuff that you enjoy. Yeah,
for the last 2 years, I was just reading and writing, and it was just constant. And you know, in the English, I mean, there's a lot of people who kind of revile those classes because they can't stand because it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of writing. But if you love to read and write, you know, I was busy as hell and I was really pretty content.
Yeah, me too. I found the same love. It was kind of a strange thing because my mother is an English teacher, English professor. Cool. And so I grew up in a house where she's like the kind of woman that her dream is to have a library where it's floor to ceiling, you know, books. She's just an avid reader. And I grew up not really reading much. You know, when you have a reader mom who's like, read, you're like, I don't want to read. And it was like a pleasant discovery to get to college and be taking these literature classes and being like, oh, I guess mom was right. It is kind of fun to read these stories, you know. But you touched on the idea of being a storyteller, and I think that that's narrative and being drawn to narrative. And I think that that's a really important thing because as artists, as creators, as people who put things out in the world, really the foundation of music and art and all that is that narrative. And that seems to be a consistent theme in everything you do.
Yeah, and you know, I absolutely adore just the basic building blocks of music as well. Like that's I mean, I don't have to tell stories through music. It's like I want to tell stories through music because that's also a part of like what really greatly excited me growing up. It was just being woken up to like all these amazing bands and just the excitement you feel. I've been talking about this kind of a lot lately is just like it's really basic. Just like you get so excited about, you know, a certain media, whatever medium of the arts that you're kind of consuming at the time. And it just inspires you. It doesn't inspire you to rip it off. It doesn't inspire you to crib it or anything like that. It just inspire, you know, like you could almost just say like, like listening to the new Smashing Pumpkins record is so exciting. Now you want to build a chair or something, you know, like it could be something totally different, but it inspires you and excites you.
It does. Absolutely. And speaking of new albums, Cursive has a new album coming out in just a couple weeks, shortly after your 50th birthday. It's September 13th? I feel like that's the release. That's September 13th, yeah. Devourer.
Yep.
One that I have to wrap my mouth around. Devourer.
Yeah, no, it's not easy to say. I'm not really good with R's either, so it's a terrible one for me. Especially if I've had a few drinks, I can't say that in words.
Absolutely the same problem. I'm from Oklahoma, and my R's, you know, we have the Oklahoma R's, and if I'm drinking, I bet you if you said, hey, what's the new Cursive album, I'd be like, Devourer.
Yeah. Yeah, it won't work for me. I guarantee it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds great so far. You guys have dropped, I think, 2 or 3 singles off of the album, and it sounds fucking great. I'm so excited for the
thanks.
album. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
What was it like putting this one together? Was this like just a joy to have you guys in the studio working together? You know, after you doing your solo one, you're back and you're making stuff.
It was. I mean, we did it similar to the way we've done the last few records since I haven't been living there.
Yeah.
I'll write a bunch of stuff at home. I'll demo it, basic demos, voice and guitar, and I'll send it out to everyone. And then I'll show up. We'll do a week at a time. We'll do 4 or 5 songs, and so there's just kind of keep doing that throughout the year. But yeah, then we got together and recorded in Omaha. One of the best takeaways for this record for me right now is just how much the band likes the record. And so for me, for as long as I've been doing this, I've always said that the first listeners that you're really writing for are the band. You just and that makes so much sense to me. So I'll just be sitting on my couch working, and I'll be thinking about, well, what do the people, what does Cursive want? What do they want to play? What do they want? I want them to be excited. I want them to be excited about the music and about what they're doing. And so that's just been huge for me. To me, I feel like it's just like the album is already such a win because I'm happy with it and they're happy with it. So
yeah. Yeah, it goes back to the Perry Farrell quote. It's the writing without these people in mind and writing really for what you want to do. And I would imagine that one of the things that we gain the older we get is just learning about, if I'm not enjoying it, if this isn't like beneficial for me and those involved in the band, then why am I even doing it? If I'm writing for an audience or I'm trying to accomplish or check boxes off of what people want to hear, then I don't see the point behind that. And as long as you have that authentic, true to self, like this is the sound that I want to play, and everybody in the room is like finishing, the last strike of the cymbal, and everybody looks at each other and they're like, that was fucking awesome, so that's what you want. But this album so far, I was looking up the 3 songs that you have released: Imposturing, Up and Away, and Botch Job. Those are the 3 that have come out. Any reason why you've led with these? Is there one in here that you were like, we want to show the world this one first, which would have been Botch Job? That was the first one?
Actually, Up and Away was the first one.
Up and Away was the first one. Okay.
But it seems like, as far as looking at the data, it seems like Botch Job is the second one, and it seems like that's the one that's that people are maybe responding to more.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. It's whatever anyone wants, whatever anyone likes, it's like works for me. But yeah, it's just like any picking singles off of anything. Like we're excited about the whole record, but you also kind of try to consider like what songs represent different aspects of the record and, and quite more simply, it's just like which ones do you think have like the biggest, strongest hooks,
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine there's some plans to tour on.
Yeah, we're doing the East Coast, October, November.
Okay.
And we'll be doing the West Coast as well. We just haven't, I think that they're still finalizing those dates for early next year.
I would hope so, since we're in the same city, for God's sakes. I feel like every time I have a guest on the show, they're always like, yeah, we're touring, and it's nowhere near LA. It's like always on the other side of the country. Please come here. But you will, obviously, Cursive is going to play here soon, I would imagine. So.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you still do anything as the Good Life project? I'm sorry, with my research, I don't know if there's any still releases coming out as the Good Life.
There's really it's dormant at the moment, but I don't think any of us consider it certainly not considered dead or anything.
Yeah. Right.
We did an album and a kind of a big push back in 2016, which is now 8 years ago somehow.
Which blows my mind. That pandemic really robbed us of time, because when you think of those 2016, 2017, 2018, those numbers, I'm always like, well, that was not that. That was a while ago. Like it's kind of shocking.
Yeah, no, it is ridiculous.
Oh man. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And, I would imagine that my audience, they've absolutely heard Cursive and your work before, but if they haven't, you gotta go just go and look at all the different places that you stream music or go physically buy some vinyl from Tim. He's got, support they're doing. I bet you your albums sound great on vinyl. All that sound.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Yeah, but Cursive, The Good Life, and Tim Kasher has solo music out there as well, and he collaborates with just tremendous. He surrounds himself with talented people, vocalists and musicians, and on that last solo album, you had some great people jump in, Jeff Rosenstock, and others that came along, and just a really cool album. So I highly recommend for everybody to check that out as well, and set your calendars to know that September 13th, you're going to go get Devourer.
It'll be Devour, because my R's turned to W. They turned to W's.
Yeah, so let's just Devour. Devourer.
Devourer.
Well, now that we've officially been introduced via Zoom, now what's exciting for me is now I'm going to start messaging you and being like, Tim, I'm going to this show. Will I see you there? And I'm going to find you there for sure. I'm trying to think what I have coming up soon, but I'm drawing a blank because they seem to just pop up randomly and go. But I will be at Best Friends Forever in October, so I'm excited to go and see all those a lot of people. You've got Mr. Bright Eyes himself up there, another famous Omaha musician. But looking forward to seeing Cursive live. So everybody, please check out Tim's stuff, his bands, his music. Support him. Go see him live. Buy that vinyl. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on Waterproof Records. It's been awesome.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much.
Yeah, take care.
I have a feeling if I do this show for a few more years and I meet every amazing artist, musician, talented person that I've loved in bands, my heart will be so full, because I'll be like, I got the chance to meet so many talented musicians, share these amazing conversations with them, get the opportunity to maybe go to concerts, see them live, and have them look out in the crowd and be like, hey, there's Jacob. Like, I'll get to go to Cursive now when he plays, and Tim might look out in the crowd. Well, if there's not people moshing and slamming into each other, like I said, I'd be in the back afraid to break a limb. But at some point in time, maybe he'll see me and be like, hey, there he is. There's Jacob. And that's just so cool to me. Like, I just love that I get to have that experience. What a cool conversation. What a great guy. Just, we had a lot in common, and we were able to share about, love of story and narrative. And I loved hearing about his journey, as a musician, and the things that really drive him to create and what's important to him. And I think being so close in age, we could really bond over kind of the things that are on our mind right now in our lives. But again, so truly grateful for Tim Kasher coming on to Waterproof Records. And like I said on the show, you should definitely go check out all of Cursive's album. There's so many great ones out there, and The Good Life, and Tim Kasher's solo albums. Fantastic musician, just very prolific, and has more than enough to keep you busy for quite some time. So, and keep an eye out for his new album. But before I close things out, I do want to thank Pantheon Podcast, which I am so thrilled to be a part of. They make this show easy for me. I'm a part of a network of amazing musicians and shows that are out there that are on Pantheon Podcasts. And when they found me, I was like, oh, I'm so honored. I started this show. If you've been with me since the beginning, you go back to those first few episodes, and I'm recording against a stock blue wall in my bedroom, and there's like out of focus shots. Some of them I look so incredibly hungover because I was just like, well, I'm going to record a podcast today. So I'm glad you've stuck with me all these years, because I do feel like it's getting better and the quality is up there, and Pantheon Podcast is making that possible for me to create a bigger show that I hope one day I can come to a city near you. So thank you for supporting me. Make sure you take advantage of that DistroKid 30% off, and I'm so grateful to have you with me. So thanks for joining me for another Waterproof Records. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna